Hey everybody, welcome back to Terran's Books and Beyond in day 38 of VEDUS. And I just realized that half the time when I've been talking about monologues in this series, I meant to say soliloquy. Whoops. I'm an English major. I should know the difference between those two. I took 2 Shakespeare classes for crying out loud. I'm going into my shame hoodie. Anyways, I was able to finish the 5th act of The Force Doth Awaken today, and I think it's one of my favorites of the series. It's right up there with The Tragedy of the Sith Revenge and The Jedi Doth Return. Maybe not quite surpassing them, but definitely has some very strong strengths to it, if that makes sense. Okay, I can't do this. It's too hard. I like to actually make sure I'm being recorded correctly. Anyway, the 5th act had some great monologues in it, and I do mean monologues this time. A great one coming from Rey during the fight with Kylo Ren, and actually that whole fight scene between Rey and Kylo is done really well dialogue-wise, because they both have several asides that let us see some of their thoughts, of course, and Kylo is going like, oh, she's not trained, she's not as good as me, but maybe if I was able to bring her to my side, we could train together, and she could be almost as powerful as me. And then everything that Rey is saying is basically just some variant of get wrecked. Also, Chewbacca gets a great monologue when Han dies. That shouldn't be a spoiler by now, right? Anyways, Chewbacca gets a great monologue. As I mentioned before, all of his stuff is being translated now, so we get to see the whole thing in the footnotes, but it's really nice, and it's really sweet, and exactly what the guy deserves after everything that he goes through in this play. We also get some more interaction between Leia and Rey in this play, and I really appreciate that, because their togetherness was severely underutilized, and unfortunately we can't really do anything more with that these days, so it's glad that they were able to get a few more lines of dialogue with each other in here than they were able to get to in the final draft of the movie. And to see the rest of my thoughts on this play, as well as what I thought of it as a whole, you can check out my complete review on Goodreads, which I have linked in the description below. Now, the certain point of view story today is The Angle by Soule, and this one is from the perspective of Lando Calrissian, which is pretty nice because he's a fairly major character when you think about it, yet he hasn't really gotten any spotlights in any part of the galaxy. I guess he got his comic, and I think maybe he got an episode in Rebels, but the upcoming movie is probably going to be the first major insight into his character and his history. But this is a nice precursor to that, because we get to see a lot of how he thinks, and because it's Lando, it's also kind of a reflection of how Han thinks, because the crux of this story is that Lando sees the footage of the Millennium Falcon helping attack the Death Star, and he's trying to figure out what's Han's angle, what's the play, what's the con that's going on, because he can't figure out why Han would risk so much by helping the rebellion, openly attacking the Empire and their greatest superweapon. Like, what is there to gain from that? Lando knows historically that heroes get screwed over. The house, which is the Empire, always wins. So like I mentioned, it's a nice insight into the way Lando thinks. It's also a nice precursor to when we see him in Empire Strikes Back, because we're able to see how the Empire is able to pressure him into helping them, and also how he's able to shift allegiances so powerfully, how he's able to throw his lot in with the rebellion once things go to shit on Bespin. I can also just appreciate the placement of the story in this anthology, because going through this thing the past few days, if you remember from yesterday's vlog, I mentioned how they've all been very heavy, because they've all been about the toll that this war, that this battle takes on everyone involved in the rebellion. So it's nice to have this one here as a bit of breathing space. Like, obviously, there's probably been a lot of mood whiplash back and forth, which I haven't really felt because I've only been reading one story a day. But having so many stories with similar moods going on for the past week or so has kind of just kept on pushing at me. So it is nice to have one that is a bit of a breather before we get to the end, because I can imagine there's still going to be a bit more weight in these last 2 stories. And since I finished the plays and there are only 2 stories left in this book, then I've decided I'm going to read both of those stories for tomorrow's update, and that leaves day 40 completely free for something else. What's it going to be? Well, you guys are just going to have to wait and find out, because we've reached the end of today's VEDUS update. So you guys know the drill. You can hit that subscribe button, or you can check me out on some social media I've linked below, and until tomorrow, I'll see you all later.